Okay, Canto 9 is just beyond the horizon, which means that this is the last call for story predictions. I want to get my ideas out here, and also help our famously illiterate community know what to expect based on the source books. Today, I'll be focusing on Ryoshu and Meursault's cantos. After Canto 9, I'll get to Outis and Faust's. Then I'll be going back to everyone who's already gotten their cantos to see where they might end up next in Purgatorio. Oh, and for anyone who's wondering how I know the order of cantos, we've known since the beginning that it's the order in which the sinners introduce themselves at the start of the game. Now, I'm focusing on the main source materials. I know that Ryoshu's canto will likely include works by the same author, as well as water margin. But I wanted to keep my scope narrow enough to get things across concisely and not spiral into speculation, on speculation, on speculation, etc. I'll also be skipping over some of the big common theories, so I can focus on my own personal ideas, though I will still mention them when relevant. Now, of course, none of these predictions particularly matter in the long run. Project Moon is known for their surprises and loose adaptations of the source material. I'm doing this because I read the books and I want to talk about my favorite moments in them, plus explore the themes of each character, and explore them with the original stories in mind. Also, warning, these are some older literature that covers some heftier topics than what's common in Project Moon. I'll really just be glancing over these topics, but I felt a warning was still needed. Without further ado, let's get into Ryoshu's source material is Hellscream, a short story that any of you can read pretty easily online, so I'll just give the basics. The narrator is the servant of a noble lord. This lord commissioned Yoshihide, aka Ryoshu, to create a portrayal of hell. For inspiration, Yoshihide regularly subjects his assistants to torture of various kinds. For the final centerpiece, he wants an image of a young woman burning alive in a carriage as she's swarmed by birds. Surprise, surprise, the young woman chosen is Yoshihide's own daughter. After a complete breakdown, Yoshihide finishes his masterpiece and hangs himself. There's a few more details I should go over first, though. The monkey, which is jokingly also named Yoshihide because of his wild nature and protectiveness over Yoshihide's daughter. And if we're talking about the monkey, we should talk about the time the monkey saved Yoshihide's daughter from the assaults from the story's lord. I'll get into what I think this moment will be translated to in a bit, because Project Moon has obviously stayed away from any sort of sexual violence. I also noticed one particular instance of torture in which a snake had snuck its way into the room, and Yoshihide actually panicked and showed some level of concern for his assistants, that characterized him as not being completely heartless to others besides his daughter, though you could argue it was just to keep the torture confined to what he was looking for. This wasn't a super important moment in the overall story or anything like that, but Project Moon has a lot of smaller references to moments like these in their adaptations, so keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, we've got the gist. Now, how is this going to go down in Limbus? We know that our destination has got to be the House of Spiders, which, based on context clues, is either a pinky stronghold or a neutral ground between the fingers as a whole. People have their expectations on a finger bowbell, but I don't think it's the time just yet. Ryoshu's story should start as being her own, and in her state, there's not a lot of room for finger politics that I'd want from a bowbell. Not to mention that, even with some tools to level the playing field, we just don't have the means to fight any real threats the fingers would throw at us. So let's save the bowbell for next time. We have all of Purgatorio to get to this. Now, it's clear to see that the Lord from the story is in some way going to be the leader of the House of Spiders. But I think there's something more to him. I believe that the Lord is the father of Ryoshu's child. Hear me out. We've all been wondering who would be crazy enough to get with Ryoshu, and I think it would be someone she looks up to, someone who not only matches her crazy, but goes beyond. I wouldn't even say they need to be married at all. It could have been a fling of passion. Whatever the case, this lets us recontextualize an important scene in the book. We can take the assault of Yoshihide's daughter, which is a topic Project Moon has understandably kept away from, and reframe it as something Project Moon has a lot of experience with, and something Kim Ji-hoon has said is an intentional common theme in his works. Parental abuse! Woo! I think the Lord gets so caught up in his art that he's willing to even harm his own daughter. And as we get more and more flashbacks, we see Ryoshu come to more and more of a realization of what her man is willing to do, but doesn't quite realize the full extent until it's too late. Well, that's one character down. Now what about the monkey? Personally, I hope it's an actual monkey, and that Project Moon plays into just how terrifying the bastards can be. Something not quite human, but so close. Watching Ryoshu, judging, serving as a reminder to her sins, and actually scaring her would be so fucking cool. However, there's also the route of turning the monkey into a person, in which case I could see the monkey being a Heisho, hired to guard her daughter. I don't know if the Heisho are allowed to leave H Corp, as this will likely take place in Q Corp, but we'll see. If you really wanted to get funky with it, you could even make this monkey Heisho into, say, Sun Wukong, if you wanted him to be a reoccurring character. But that's just getting into a tangent of hype for hype's sake rather than storytelling, so let's table that as a fun idea. The narrator, I have heard talk of him being a good candidate for our next member of Damien's Blue Man group, which I agree is a possibility, though there's not much more to say in that regard. The narrator isn't much of a character throughout the story. Finally, the main course, the finale. What happened to Ryoshu's daughter? Well, Limbus never quite translates these big events one-to-one, so the burning carriage is probably going to be translated to something else, and I think I know what that is. Ryoshu's daughter was sent to hell. Think about it. We've seen the gates of hell itself through Dante's visions. A mere portrait of hell wouldn't satisfy a character like the Lord when adapted into the city. Hell itself is the art here. The House of Spiders is investigating hell itself, and needed to send someone in as a sacrifice. Perhaps to open the door? Whatever it is, the daughter suffered a fate worse than simple death. This is where my predictions for the backstory ends. This isn't even getting into the theories that Ryoshu's sword is made from her daughter's remains, or the idea that Ryoshu has had her memories burned away. I decided to leave those out just because others have already covered them pretty extensively, more than I think I really could. But now I need to talk about the actual events we'll be going through, and I don't quite have as much to say on this. Based on all we've seen so far, and the fact that I've decided against the finger bow bell, I think it's just going to be Ryoshu going on a rampage. I'm sure will give us something to establish a proper setting. Maybe Q Corp decides they don't want to tolerate the existence of the Spider House anymore. Whatever the case, it's a lot more difficult to predict the setting of Project Moon, given they're always expanding and adding new aspects. We can probably expect a moment where Ryoshu goes out of our control, possibly even as a boss fight, and she'll have to learn to contain her rage and use it where it matters instead of burning everything around her. For all my ramblings about what I expect, the only thing I'm actually certain about is this. Ryoshu's canto is going to be a turning point, bringing us to the last third of Inferno. We'll be seeing a lot of big city-changing events from here on out, and getting some answers to things like Dante and their connection to Hell. This is also why I think it's time for us to receive Aleph Ego. Aleph has always come at the point where the game takes its training gloves off. Not as a finale, but as a signifier that things will only be escalating from here. The Stranger is a book about Meursault, a man in French Algeria whose mother passes away. He attends her funeral, learning about her life and the home he put her in, feeling remorseful about that decision, but ultimately coming to the conclusion that it was best for both of them. Soon after, he meets with an old co-worker, Marie, and the two go on a date. We see snippets of Meursault's life over the next few weeks. He continues to develop his relationship to Marie, and meets a new friend, Raymond, a pimp. There are two encounters in this time frame that I want to mention. The first is an old man who abuses his dog on a walk every day, but when he loses the dog, he laments, saying he got the dog after the early death of his wife, and that he's heartbroken to lose it. Meursault mentions that the dog is probably at the pound, and the old man can go pick it up for a whole week before it's put down, but the old man never makes any effort to do so, just continues being upset. The next is a brief encounter with a woman who Meursault describes as being robotic, going about her day in an off-putting, predetermined way. I want to note this in particular because it is very much reminiscent of the way in which Meursault acts now. As Meursault is invited to the beach by Raymond, the group gets into a scuffle with some Arabs who had a grudge against Raymond. The fight ends with some injuries, but everyone alive. Meursault is handed a gun during this time. As Meursault goes for a walk, suffering from the blazing sun, he encounters the Arab man, and, with no other provocation, shoots him. Then, after a pause, fires 4 more times into the corpse. Meursault is arrested. His lawyer tells him the circumstances, and that, while he'll certainly face consequences, he won't spend his whole life in prison. Through discussion, the lawyer learns that Meursault does not believe in God, to which the lawyer is confused, saying that everyone believes in God, and that some people just don't want to admit it. Meursault is upset by this assumption about him, and the subject is dropped. After a year, Meursault is given his trial, during which it is clear that, because Meursault fully admits to his crimes, the prosecution has instead chosen to attack Meursault's character, and paint the murder as the premeditated actions of a psychopath, rather than a spur-of-the-moment decision made under fatigue. The witnesses testify about his mother's funeral, how he accepted coffee with milk, and how he didn't visibly cry. He went on a date and watched comedy the next day, without regard to her death. To them, he grieved wrong. Because of this, Meursault is sentenced to death. In prison, Meursault contemplates his morality. A priest comes to visit him, asking Meursault to repent for his sins. Meursault, having had enough of religion, grabs the priest through the bars and goes on a page-long rant about how much he hates the way people set expectations of him, and try to decide what he believes. The book ends with Meursault hoping there's a large crowd of jeering people when he's executed. Whew, that was a bit longer than Hellscreen. I frankly love this book. Meursault is a terrible person, but the fact that he's judged for the way he expresses emotions, rather than the actual crimes he's committed, manages to still make you empathize with him. The fact that Kim Ji-hoon has stated that The Stranger is his favorite book makes me excited for Canto 10. Now, it's clear that we're going to N-Corp for this one. The question is, why? Well, I'm sure we'll get it set up for in Canto 9, but I think it's because of a retrial. I believe that Meursault has already been convicted of his crime, and has essentially been bought from N-Corp by Limbus Company. Now he has to be put on trial again for some reason or another, and this will decide his fate in the future. This situation allows us to be able to explore N-Corp on mostly peaceful terms, while still having animosity. Obviously, we're going to get interactions between the new League of Nine and their Sinner counterparts, but I want to focus on Meursault for now. The Sinners will collect evidence, possibly without Meursault present, and learn about him and his actions through witness testimony, getting surprising and sometimes contradictory views on who Meursault is, meeting characters from the book, and learning how they view Meursault. What's the incident that caused this trial? Well, based on the changed quote in his trailer, turning "Today, Mother died" into "Today, I killed Mother," plus his mention of having heard Carmen's voice, I think it's clear Meursault distorted and killed his mom. Not exactly a unique take, but it's the most clear explanation. Then comes the trial. Dante and the others have to make a convincing defense for Meursault, while fighting against N-Corp's insane justice system. Remember that N-Corp is all about defining humanity and the human experience, so the trial will likely focus a lot around that, and their conflict with Meursault, who refuses to be defined by others. I've no doubt that if this trial theory is true, the LCB will fail to secure an acquittal, bringing us into conflict with what I believe to be Meursault's antagonist for the canto, a combination of the judge and the priest from the novel, someone who tries to impose his views and beliefs into Meursault. Speaking of, I believe Meursault himself has had a part of himself removed in some way, through N-Corp's singularity as part of his sentence. I think that, alongside his nihility developed during his prison sentence, is the reason for his generally apathetic behavior. In the finale, we'll get Meursault talking more about himself, cutting through the perceptions of others, and stating in no uncertain terms what's going through his head and what happened that day he distorted. I don't think that he really killed his mom in the sense of murder, but there's some stronger emotional reason he had to do so. Something that looks horrible to an outsider, but becomes a touching emotional moment to those who understand their dynamic. Meursault's big ego moment will represent the page-long rant against the priest, and boy am I excited for that. I want it to be a minute-long beatdown with non-stop shit-talking. After the canto, Meursault will likely remain stoic and keep some level of indifference to the world as a whole, but will also be more willing to express his emotions, make decisions, and form direct bonds with the people around him. He'll never be normal, but he'll be uniquely himself in a way much healthier than before. But wait, what about N-Corp? Well, I believe we'll learn about something they're planning to do at District L. Something incredibly destructive, and we'll have to travel through District M in order to get there in time, leading us to... But that's for next time. For now, let's enjoy Canto 9, and I'll follow up with what changes based on we officially get for Ryoshu's story. I can't wait to see what I got right, and perhaps even more so, what I got wrong. If you like the content I make, be it these videos, Stars of the City, or the Magic the Gathering project, then consider donating to my Ko-Fi. I don't have any rewards to offer, as I keep everything I do free, but any donations will help me justify spending more time on big videos like this. See you all soon. I've got a special one-shot collaboration with Kamui, Cinephon, Tonrep, and Prior Year lined up for the night of the 21st, so we hope to see you there. More information can be found on my latest community post. Until then, take care.